Hey everybody, working from home today. I had to have a quick shower before I thought I'd record this. Be nice and clean. Which reminds me, don't forget to subscribe if you want more. Like the video if you like it. Leave a comment. All that good stuff. Yeah, and share, of course. Obviously, that was the last one. All that good stuff if you don't mind. If you like this video, do that. Anyway, so I think last week I was talking about gigahertz and how in the early days, I'm going to check. I need to stabilize my hands here a bit, don't I? There we go. In the early days, things needed less power, or rather, as a developer, we had computers that had less power, therefore we wrote for them. I remember in the early days programming originally DOS before I actually became a developer, and you had a lot less memory. In fact, I remember trying to run things on DOS and having to kind of mess around with the startup scripts just to get that extra couple of K just to get things running. Sometimes it was ridiculous compared to today, where you have 64, 120 gigabyte plus memory in your computers. But yeah, so this week I'm going to go and talk a little bit, partly I suppose, but when I started working in Agile and Sprint. Now, pre that, for the first, I suppose, 10 years of development, it was always around a kind of waterfall model. And I do remember when the software engineer talked about a V model, which kind of presents you kind of, your things like the analysis, design, all that kind of stuff. And then I think on the other side, it was going to sort of the development, test, and all that kind of stuff. Something like that. It's kind of like a waterfall, but it actually was in a V. Yeah, I'm not sure the difference. Go look it up. I could look it up, but I don't want to because I don't use it. But yeah, I was always waterfall, where we had a design philosophy. There was one or two companies which were very smaller in size, and really we didn't need to. It's kind of like the Wild West. We didn't really need to put designs in. We just kind of like went with it, if you know what I mean, and put in functionality that we thought were useful. I mean, what would happen is we'd get a very woolly specific, like, for example, we send emails, it's just text formats. We want to add attachments, and that's one of the things I did years ago. And I just remember it was that was the woolly kind of requirement, and it was literally left to my own devices to just do what I want in some respect. So I did, and it was good. But other companies had waterfall. I do remember there was a lot of time spent creating documents like high level design, low level design, and so forth. And then you come to the development and do like 10 lines of code. So you'd spend 2 weeks doing all the designs and 2 hours doing all the code, or something stupid like that. But then came Agile from my perspective. I mean, Agile was around long before we started, or I started doing it. But I remember being introduced to Agile around 2009, I think, something like that. We decided to use Scrum. And I remember at the time there was a company that produced a tool that it was actually really good for what I did at the time. It was all just about the process, the Scrum process. But then we went with Jira. The company I actually then went to work for, and I became a full-time Scrum Master at that point, which was about a year, 6 months even after, it wasn't even a year, probably about 6 months after I got introduced to Agile. Used Jira with a plugin which I believe was called something like Grasshopper or something like that, because Jira was basically a ticket system, and then this plugin allowed you to do sprints. Which kind of stuck really, because I think they got inbuilt now, and obviously I think Jira out of the box does sprint. I think everybody more or less uses Jira for their agile sprint process, not just sprint, but many other things like I think Kanban or whatever can be done all within in Jira these days. But yeah, so my instruction was here's agile, and we're going to use sprint, and we're going to Scrum, sorry, and this is the sprints. We're going to use 2 weekly sprints and go at it. I think my introduction was also the fact that, and by the way, you're going to be, as well as a developer, you're going to be the Scrum Master and a little bit of lead. So, okay, yep. And then 6 months after that, I kind of got made redundant for that company, and then the role I got was full-time Scrum Master, which was good, but I do kind of regret because I got offered this other role at the same time, which was actually doing embedded software for TV boxes that it processed viewing data for advertising at the time, I believe, if I remember rightly. But yeah, so went from doing this long-winded process of Waterfall to here's Sprint, and then it was that was also kind of a little bit Wild West because it was literally, well, each company does Sprint, and we're not quite sure what we need, but we're going to do it to how we want to do it. I remember going to one company and talking to them and said, "Oh yeah, we're using Scrum. We want sprints. So we're currently doing 2 week sprints. We want to get down to one week sprints, and then eventually we want to make it a 1 day sprint." I'm kind of like, a 1 day sprint? What's the point? Literally, it comes in every day. You're going to actually do your sprint planning? I don't know. But yeah, sprint is good. I like sprint. I like agile. It does help. I do feel you have far more meetings and process than we do with, say, Waterfall. However, done correctly, even though you might feel you're doing less, you're releasing more because the stuff that you release potentially has more stability because of the process. You could argue that fact, and I think it depends on each company, and it depends on the process. For example, most large companies, as part of the build process, you have things like Jenkins, and they would run sort of AAC tests within that process of the build, and that's sort of the end part of the sprint, because obviously that's where you're doing the build and the test part. But having a process which means you can't sign something off until it's tested and released. And at any point during the process, you can get feedback into the ticket that you're working on, the story that you're working on, to say, actually, we've seen your testing, actually we feel that it may need this element here added to it, and you can, in theory, you can change the story and potentially increase the story points. But yeah, I'm going a bit beyond what I wanted to talk about, really, but there you go. But yeah, my introduction to Agile and Scrum was back around 2009, and I'm still doing it now. Are you a developer? Do you do planning, Scrum Master, whatever? Why not leave a comment? Right, I'm going to go now, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.